The good thing is we are ready to announce Snapshot feature as alpha, and we'll have a blog post soon. And these couple of weeks, C and I been working on adding more documentation. So please check them out. If you see there's any problem or you think any information missing, please let us know. And then we'll continue to basically discuss the features we want to have in near future. Some are needed before we can move to beta. So last couple of meetings, I think we have been talking a few important features we do want have them before moving to beta, including some deletion protection. There are a few scenarios we want to protect. Here we list 3 of them. And there are also a couple of scenarios we don't need protection. So for those protection, we plan to use finalizer similar to storage in use feature for PV. And we should work on this very soon. Any questions? Okay, good. And we also want to have a deletion policy. So as we know, PV, right? We have right now still called reclaim policy. And here we probably want to call it deletion policy more appropriate. So by default, it's delete. That means when user delete volume snapshot object and the volume snapshot content object and its associated physical snapshot will both deleted. And the other policy is we call retain, means when user delete their volume snapshot object, the content object and also the associated physical snapshot will still exist. So the controller won't delete them. And one extra question here I want to confirm is for PVC. So if the policy is retained and the volume, the PV, will go into called released phase. And in that phase, that volume, that PV cannot be bound to any other PVC again. So the user, the administrator need to manually actually delete the PV object and create a new PV object. And then that new PV object, of course, can be bound to other PVC. But here I'm thinking for snapshots, we seems don't need that restriction. There is no released status or phase for volume snapshot. Actually, volume snapshot does not have any phases. And after you delete the previous volume snapshot, the volume snapshot content still stick around, and the admin can manually, let's say, bind this to another volume snapshot by changing the volume snapshot reference in the spec. So any questions about this policy? Basically, this content object can be rebound to a different volume snapshot. So no questions about it?
I have a question, Jing.
Sure.
So how does the user know the identity of the volume snapshot content object so it can refer to it and bind to it once it's in the release state?
The user has need that information either from sysadmin, or just like how user know about a PV object. either maybe the user allowed to create a PV, or user contact system in and ask about that piece of information.
Well, right now users don't know about PVs, and right now they don't use, even if they knew, they cannot use that information. So we're changing that behavior now with volume snapshot content.
So if user, let's say, create the volume snapshot first, right? And that volume snapshot also create a content object. And the volume snapshot will have a reference or the content name in the spec. So the user can see, okay, at least the name of the volume snapshot content API object, right? That's the only information the user needs to know, the name of that content API object, to be able to bind to it.
Okay, so this means basically you have to require users to keep track of that reference somehow post deletion of the volume snapshot object. So this is something we need to ask them to do. They have to do some bookkeeping on the side, because once they delete the object, they would lose any record of that relationship. So they have to do some bookkeeping out of band.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. So for volume, it's also the same, right? If you just delete the PVC, you don't, for user side, if you don't keep a record of your PV, you lose that information, right? You don't know what is the PV name or etc. So from that part, it's no difference from PVC. But you're right. I think if we support retain policy, we need to let user kind of be aware what's going on and how they should keep track of this content object.
Yes.
And kind of relevant to this is in the bottom, I have been thinking whether we should provide some functionality, maybe just through kubectl, the command. Let's say if the user know a volume, right, and they can query the list of volume snapshots like taken from this volume. But there are many choices like how we can provide that functionality. Basically, let's say user have volume and the user might want to know, okay, what are all the snapshots have been taken for this volume? And we can provide some kind of interface for user to query it. Otherwise, the user might like not keep tracking of those information and don't know after they take a snapshot and forget, what they have, what the snapshot they have. So is that okay for your question? So for this retain policy, basically this is how we plan to design. Like any other issues? Okay, good. Then we want to check, okay, what drivers we current support and plan to support. Currently, we have the following CS driver already implemented, including GCE, OpenSDS, Ceph, RBD, host path, Podworks. And we heard like MapR is working in progress. They might need to take some time to like merge the feature into their driver. And also there are a couple of CSI driver plan to implement Snapshot. But for a few, like we think also important, like Cinder, AWS, GlassFS, anyone interested in help with that or heard someone will help with that? Okay, not yet. So we'll like keep track of like who is interested in using those drivers and try to find help on implementing those drivers. Yeah. Yes.
So for AWS, I think someone is already working on a CSI driver, so they can probably do that as part of that. I think, I don't know if Sad know a little bit more about that. I remember someone is working on a CSI driver for AWS. So
yes, they are. I think on the AWS side, it's somebody named Nishi, and on the Red Hat side, I think Yang and team are helping with that.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. I also heard Red Hat being planned to help with that. So we will have like more support on those drivers. And for resource quota, yes, sure.
Regarding support for drivers. So one issue we ran into when we were trying to support volume resize was that admission controller had checks for certain drivers, whether they support resize or not, and then everything else was rejected. So this caused complications for CSI drivers as well as for all the external controllers that were trying to implement resize. So just a cautionary note, let's not repeat that. I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but let's consider that some CSI plugins may support snapshots, some may not, or we may support snapshots with NFS or SCSI PVs through external controllers. So we shouldn't have the checks that will reject volume snapshot operation based on just driver type in the admission controller.
Okay, so basically you are saying we should not reject just based on the capability of the drivers for those API objects.
I think that's something else, right? We need to check the capabilities reported by the CSI driver, right? I believe he was saying something. Are they actually checking the type, like whether it is GlassJFS or whether it is like iSCSI, something like? Okay, yeah, I don't think we have that because this is a CSI drivers. We don't check that. The resize maybe because that's implemented for entry. Maybe that's why I'm thinking. Yeah. I don't think we have this problem.
In the case of CSI drivers, you need to query the CSI driver based on its capabilities to know whether it supports resize or not. So the way admission controller was previously written for resize, it was just doing a simple check that whether, for example, GC was an expandable plugin or not, OpenSCS was an expandable plugin or not, and then he was rejecting everything else. So that prevented external controllers from supporting resize. So basically, I'm saying that logic should reside in one of the controllers that handle resize or snapshots as opposed to admission controller, the way it does it blindly and without much context.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I believe we don't have that problem, but let us know if you run into that. Because we are really just checking the CSI driver's capabilities, whatever it says supports create delete snapshot or not. It's not by admissions controller.
So right now for alpha we don't have admission controller, but we plan to have it before we move to beta. And right now we have a PR like to add admission controller. So that admission controller is basically for early verification, like verifying whether the volume snapshot API object, the information is correct. Because for each volume snapshot API object, you have the PVC information, right? You want to take snapshot from that volume. And it will check, for example, PVC is bound to a PV, and whether it could take a snapshot for that volume, right? At least the PVC should exist and they are bound. And also check the snapshot class If it does not specify snapshot class, it can set a default one. And the way it set default one is actually it first get the storage class from the PVC. And based on the storage class provisioner, right, what driver you use provision volume, and it find out whether you have a default snapshot class with the same driver. If it cannot find it, and it will fail to create the volume snapshot API object. So this is
That's fine. Yeah, these projects are fine in the admission controller.
Right. So this is what currently admission controller do. So in the future, like we might use admission controller or some other verification that we haven't currently we haven't thought about anything else. And for resource quota, I think we discussed last week, and it's quite important. And similar to storage quota, we can have restrict the total number of volume snapshots you can create per namespace, also per snapshot class. And we say we also want to like have the size restriction, but that size would be restore size, since that's the only size information we get from snapshot. Currently in Kubernetes, we don't have the implementation to support resource quota for CRD because snapshot is CRD, right? But I know someone in our team, like in a different group, is trying to work to support the quota for CRDs. And I will talk to them and see how it progresses and see how far away for having this feature. I hope yes, we can have this soon. Since before moving to beta, I think we need this quota support too. Any questions? Okay, good. And for recreation retry policy, so I think we not yet reach a final conclusion, but this seems not very critical, but nice to have a feature. For now, I'm thinking of a simple, you allow user to set a period of time to retry. This period of time start from when the API object is created. When API project is created, there is a timestamp, and the controller can check within, let's say, in 10 seconds. And if it failed to create snapshot, it can do a retry. If it exceeds that period of time, it will stop and won't retry anymore. We mentioned deadline, etc., but considering the difficulty, the time difference between different machines, it might not that easy to implement for now. For this simple a period time, it seems very easy to add. Any questions about this or? No? Okay, good. So another thing is related to topology. So we know for Snapshot, some cloud providers have the capability of create snapshot and also upload snapshots to cloud, right? So it's available from from either globally or from a zone. And snapshots, but for some other providers, after it's create snapshot, they might require a separate step to upload the snapshot to certain location. And similar to volume, right? Volume right now have this topology aware feature, and you can set allowed topology. Here I just copied example for in storage class, you can set allowed topologies, and in that you can set what zones you allow to provision this volume. So I'm thinking for snapshot, we can follow the similar or the same approach, right, to support the same interface for topology. And so it tells which zone for certain cloud providers, right, you want to create a snapshot. And first we need to add this into CSI, and then we can support it. And we plan to follow the exactly like interface for the volume. Any questions for this part?
So that would be specified in the snapshot class object, right?
Yes, yes. It should be very similar to volume. But we don't have, of course, this binding mode, right? So it's not relevant for snapshot. And in here, it's basically can specify zone. I'm not sure for other snapshots, they might have a different key, right? A different, topology they want to use. And I think this topology probably also needed before we move to beta. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think it's critical because one workaround would be to specify topology using the primary section in the snapshot class. So even if we don't have like these first class fields in the snapshot class object, people can use the primary section to specify those fields until,
That's true. So since we have opaque parameters, it's possible to use that. It's just like if they start using that, and it's maybe a little bit hard to move to this topology back. Then we'll see like in next quarter whether we can like also work on this, how much work it needed. Yeah. But no question about the feature itself. Okay, good. So the next one we've been thinking is related to reverse snapshot. So currently we only support to create a new volume from snapshot, right? That's a new volume, completely different volume from the original volume you take snapshot from. Some driver might support revert capability. That means you just revert the snapshot to the original volume, right? You still have you're not going to create a new one. It's just still the old one, but after you reverse snapshot, right, it go back to your previous state when you take the snapshot. And some drivers like might use this feature so it's important to them. some driver might not like have this functionality.
Would it be optional? Like
Mm-hmm.
the driver could say, no, I don't do this.
And
then what happens?
so if we provide interface for user to do that, right, and driver say, no, I cannot do this, then it will kind of return an error response. So fail to do this, yeah, and nothing changed.
Yeah, I think we can use capabilities, right? Like even create, delete snapshot, those are all capabilities in CSI.
Well, yeah. At the CSI level, obviously there'd be a capability that you could report or not report. But at the Kubernetes level, if it says no, I can't do that, and the user asks anyways, yeah, do we just fail and say sorry, too bad?
Yes. So I believe so. Right now we have arrow in like no, it's basically a PVC. I think we should report like at least an event saying it failed to do this. And for related to PV, it should not change the current state. So because we need to differentiate actually a revert and create a new snapshot. Maybe we need to think a little bit more about this and what interface we can support this revert. So currently we say, okay, you create a new PVC and the source would be a snapshot, then it will provision a new volume from snapshot. But for reverse, that means you probably have an existing PVC, right? And then you want to revert a snapshot and to the previous state. And that how we trigger that by just modifying, let's say, a data source of the PVC to a snapshot or not. And this is also relevant to the things we've been discussing sometime before is we call it in-place restore. That means your PVC already exists. It bound to a PV, but the user somehow want to change the underlying volume. And so a new volume is provisioned from the snapshot, and the PV can reference to that new volume, and the PVC can bond to that new PV. That is used for basically if user have a running workload, right, and you want to something happen for the volume and you want to fill over to the new storage, and this new volume can start from the snapshot, right? Can be copied from the snapshot, provision from the snapshot. So these two are kind of relevant, but different things, and what interface we can use and how to trigger those is kind of a tricky, I think. And we need to think a lot more about that. And in-place restore, we do have a proposal, but it's not have a consensus yet. And next time, I think we can work on those two and how to differentiate and how to design those tools if we want to support them. Is that okay? Or any questions about those? Okay, good. So the next one here is to list, delete snapshots taken from a PVC, as I mentioned. So this might be just a nice feature for user be able to easily query, okay, what snapshots have been taken for a particular volume, and they can manage. If there are too many, they can delete some of those. And this we might be use kubectl as interface, and you can put a flag like volume source equal to something.
So this one's only going to tell you the ones that are in Kubernetes database,
True.
right? It's not going to go to CSI and actually list the snapshots.
Yes, I don't think we can or plan to do that, because snapshots, we only, in Kubernetes, we have those API objects to represent them, right? Without those volume snapshot API objects, it's hard for us to keep track. And
Yeah, I've been trying to think of a way that Kubernetes can take advantage of the snapshot list CSI RPC, because it's, so far we haven't needed it at all. But there's got to be a way to say, okay, CSI knows that there's some snapshot that Kubernetes doesn't yet know about. How do we get Kubernetes to know about it?
Well, I think so. The snapshot list, I think, is valuable, particularly for like a create snapshot request and stuff like that, and then any internal things that the plugin does. So I think that's all good. As far as the like, Ben, are you thinking of like the ability to import external snapshots into the system? Is that what you're thinking?
Well, yeah. In particular, ones that are taken on a schedule that's implemented beneath Kubernetes instead of on top of Kubernetes. So, like, assuming that there is something taking snapshots and you decide you want one of those, how do you get it? How do you get Kubernetes to know about it so that it can then do the rest of the things that Kubernetes can do with that snapshot?
Okay. I just want to say, like, right now, if you want to import like existing snapshots, you can do that, but you need to know your snapshots handler, like the ID, and you can, we call static binding. So similar to PVC, you create a snapshot content API object to represent that snapshot, and then user can create a volume snapshot API object, point to that content object, and system can bind them together. That is like you import a single snapshot, existing snapshot, outside of Kubernetes and to Kubernetes.
But the problem with that scheme is it would have to be done in a way that depends on the specific CSI driver, right? Because you're going to create the content like something has to create a content object that the CSI driver will with the right values for that CSI driver.
Correct. So
and so it's not the kind of thing that you could expect an administrator to just know how to do. They're going to need something to help them create that thing. You say, show me a list of what's there, or or take an input that helps me seek through the list of what's there, and then create the right volume content or volume snapshot content for that snapshot. And I don't think that's something we can expect an administrator to just know how to do.
Okay. So
I think,
yeah, sure. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think it's a valid feature to consider and talk about, maybe. But I think I think there's an awful lot on the plate for snapshots already.
Oh yeah. I mean, I realize this is like a pretty big, out of scope thing. I want to make sure that we don't make it impossible to solve this problem with anything that we do. That's my major concern. It's fine to do it later.
But the other side of that, the other thing that I was going to mention was, I think your example of somebody has an external snapshotter that doesn't work with Kubernetes. Frankly, I think that sort of thinking and scope should be, or that sort of thinking or process should be out of scope for what we discuss here. Because if you're not using Kubernetes, then we can't guess how you're going to do things.
Well, no, right. So the whole thing is, we have the list snapshots RPC, which we're not using, and I'm trying to think, should we use it, or should we just say no? We're, at least as far as Kubernetes is concerned, we will just ignore that.
We use that today already. We use that today already, just to check the status of the.
Right.
Well, but we use it with a filtered, so
right.
It's a degenerate case of basically get snapshot. We never just say I want to see all the snapshots.
Right.
So, and maybe that's what makes the most sense.
Well, yeah, right now, but I think that list is still helpful, right? Just for the case that Jing was.
I think. I mean,
we are doing this. We already
Yeah, I
support
agree.
static binding, so we already support that.
Yep.
So similar to the PVC static binding, so we support that for Snapshot as well.
Right,
So
but
it's useful to-
so I'll reiterate the concern I brought up a few months ago, if in case anyone has forgotten, which is that one of the problems with snapshots is that there are potentially a huge number of them. Because if you're taking them on a schedule for all of your volumes, you can quickly end up with 10 or 100 times as many snapshots as you have volumes. That's a lot of stress to put on Kubernetes, and so there's a good reason for people to want to take this or to implement snapshot automatic scheduling beneath the layer of Kubernetes, so Kubernetes API server doesn't have to deal with that massive influx of objects being created and deleted all the time. That's my big concern. If it was no big deal for there to be 50,000 snapshots in the Kubernetes database where you're creating and deleting thousands of them every day, then I would say, okay, this is not something we need to worry about. But I think that it's a scale problem.
Just a quick thing on that. I think that's a very good point. But I think that there's two things around that. From the Kubernetes point of view, as far as I know, please let me know if I'm wrong, is that it is a user serviceable request. And then the one where the system is doing the scheduled one, that's an administrator of the storage system or the system itself doing that.
Mm-hmm.
So it may not be able to that the user may be able to see that. The user probably sees only what they requested. And maybe if they can go to the administrator and say, no, I'm wondering now if there's a scheduled one that I can access. But maybe the Kubernetes is only doing what the user point of view is. Does that make sense?
Well, yeah. But I mean, the way I think about it is the administrator might create a storage class, the type of which says you will get hourly snapshots automatically taken. And so then the user has an expectation that if I create a volume of the storage class, I'm going to get hourly snapshots automatic for free. And then the question is, well, how do I go get those when it comes time to do a recovery?
So I think that's a great point. I think going back is that since the user did not create them, they're not going to be available for them as list unless we have Kubernetes like continuously watch the CSI for events, and those events being like objects created, and then it will create the CRDs for that. Right,
but my whole thing is you don't want to be creating the objects for every one of these snapshots because the churn is going to be enormous, right? So you wait until the user says, "Oh wait, I want to go back in time for this one volume," and then you go get the list of snapshots for that one volume.
So what I'm saying is that I agree with what you're saying. What I'm saying is that the user cannot see those that were scheduled. In other words, what I'm trying to say is that Kubernetes can only show the user what the user requested. It won't show those ones that were scheduled.
I totally agree. I'm trying to figure out what is the solution.
I think the solution for that would be that the as a storage provider, if I had that system, then I would provide my own way to show the user the availability out scope of Kubernetes. I mean, through my own CRD, my own operator or something. That's the way I would do it. Because if not, then it could get hairy, like you mentioned.
I agree, and that's kind of what I was getting at earlier. Is pick your paradigm. Either Kubernetes is managing it, or an external source is managing it. And if an external source is managing it and creating things, then an external source should be used to find those things.
Yes, exactly right. Just like when you deal with EBS or something like that, you could have Kubernetes create one for you, and then now the objects will be there for you. Or you could have it in the background, something else just snapping EBS volumes for you. And then you could go to that then to restore, right?
That may be the best answer. I find something about that dissatisfying, and so I'm trying to find a better answer, but I haven't found one yet. So
no, but I think if I'm like which I am, a storage provider, I would make it very simple for my user to be able to consume that, and to do that, I would have support for Kubernetes Snapshot, and then I will have an operator that sits there and that provides the other model, or maybe I can combine them both, right? I just need to provide a model that makes it simple for the user and does not even think about this. I just hide that under the covers.
Yeah, I very for the discussion. But I do see a point from Ben. So it's possible, right? But it's probably very future work. We have a CRD, something kind of help to import snapshots from the existing snapshots. So basically, for example, you can specify your volume source and the time period. And then since CSI has this list function, it can query all the snapshots satisfying your requirement, like the source from this and the time period this, and automatically generate all the contents object for you. So it's all possible. So it's just not our like urgent work.
Right. So that's kind of what I have in my mind, and my main concern today is let's not make it impossible to do that later on. We don't need to worry about it now. We just need to make sure we don't block ourselves.
Yeah. So as I think it is so far as definitely possible for all those like more advanced feature. Yes, we'll keep that in mind and won't block those useful features for like when we implement something. Yeah. Okay, that's good. And so for this kubectl, maybe also it's kind of a future work, nice to have. Like we will try to probably implement it when we have time. And the next on the list is group of snapshots. That's also quite interesting, a more advanced feature. So considering you have stateful sets, right? There are multiple pods running, and you have different volumes, and you want to take snapshots, maybe even consistent snapshots for all the volumes. And also for a pod, you might have multiple volume too. We have a list of those. And so that means you can create a group of snapshots altogether at the same time. Or some cloud provider even have this consistent group concept. They can help to create such consistent snapshots for group snapshots. And then how we implement, like provide interface and help to create such a group of snapshots. That's also something very interesting. But again, this is a very advanced feature. Not many, I think, cloud storage provider support that yet.
I think they do actually, and I think what used to be called consistency groups in OpenStack and group snapshots is very important, and I think we're gonna hit this probably as soon as snapshots start being used by customers, because when they hit, normally they do a stack of containers, right? As that's what they want to do as a user. Like I want to snap my app and my database and whatever else all together. That's the use case that they're looking for, right? They don't want independent things because they're going to make it very hard for them to come back. So I feel this is something that we're going to have to deal with as soon as possible.
Okay, then we definitely should prioritize this feature. But currently, right, our interface, right, is just a single snapshot for an individual volume to help, like, to trigger a group of such snapshots.
Yeah.
Whether we should have another CRD, right, to represent these groups.
Yeah.
That's probably something we have to design.
Yes, and you probably need a different CSI call that says snap, and you give it all the volumes because you want it to do it atomically in the storage system.
Yes. So I haven't played that group of snapshots yet, but normally the underlying, like say the driver, the plugin, you can specify a group of volumes, and then the command, let's say, take a snapshot for this group of volumes. Is that how it works?
Yeah, you could do it that way, or you could, or like I said, you could send a list of IDs, right? So either way. But I think, please let me know if I'm wrong, John. And Jing, you were on that in OpenStack, right? In Manila
Yes.
too, right? And Ben.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can definitely help with this design.
Yeah.
Right. So then I think we can at least start working on the design. Like probably we need a new, let's say, CRD to represent a group of snapshots, and that would be a quite interesting thing. It's kind of similar to safer set, right? A safer set is an API to represent a group of pods, right?
Yeah, exactly right. That's what the user, as a user, that's what I'm looking for, right? I want to snap a group of things.
Right. That make our snapshot feature like much more like useful and manageable. Yeah.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
So my feedback on this is that this is a very long list of all the features that we need to get in, which is good. It means we have a long-term plan. For Q4 is a short quarter. What we should do is prioritize this and figure out what the most important pieces are that we're going to focus on for Q4 instead of trying to do everything and not finishing anything. So maybe we can do that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
That'd be
So,
good.
okay, just the last one is more like related to clone and sharing. After this, we can just quickly go through, and we already have a few like P1. I just want to confirm. Okay, those are something we definitely want to work on in Q4. So the last one is related to clone sharing. So for example, for snapshot, snapshot also have the like source. It's not called data source, but it's source. Currently source is PVC, right? How about the source is another snapshot? What does it mean? Maybe we can use it for, let's say, clone snapshot, or just like you still have the one snapshot, but you create a separate snapshot API objects to represent, so that in a different namespace, that could be used for sharing. And also, it might be useful to clone snapshots to a different zone, different region, if cloud providers support that. Mm-hmm.
I think a couple of things on that. One is I think there's way too much. I think that would be a good one to drop for right now, just in the interest of what you already have. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is hopefully we're going to work on the transferring objects across namespaces as a generic thing this release as well. So that'll be something you'd be able to do. But I'm still pretty strongly, I don't think that doing things like creating a clone of a snapshot and then transferring that clone of the snapshot object to another namespace, I think that's a bad idea. I think you're way better off just creating a volume from the snapshot and then transferring the volume. So you don't have to manage any snapshot dependencies or anything like that. There's just too many weird dependency cases you can get into. But I'll let the rest of everybody else, if they can solve it, that's fine. But I do think that this
I agree that for the purposes of sharing, cloning is the wrong primitive to base your sharing on top of. That there are reasons to clone snapshots, in particular, like you mentioned, if you want them to be in different places. Like I want to copy here and I want to copy over there, but not for namespace sharing.
Okay, yeah. So those are kind of two different things. So for sharing, definitely, since you're working on currently this Q4, probably also working on some generic sharing proposal. So we want to also like participate and see like how it's designed, and so we can kind of see how it can be used for Snapshot too. Yeah. Yes, for this quarter, we don't need to really work much about this feature yet. Yes. So go back to the list. This deletion policy, reclaim policy. No, we now call it deletion policy, deletion protection. I think that's something we can probably should finish in Q4. So we can have that. And for resource quota, again, I need to check with the person who is working on this or support it in CRD and let you know how much time we probably can have this. But this is, I think, is also quite important feature, right? We want to have. And for the mission controller for this, we pretty much already have it. So it's okay. And for creation retry, I think we kind of agree it's not critical. So we can either work on it, or if we don't have time, we don't need. I agree. Okay, no objection. So topology, I think for this quarter, we plan to first add it to CSI. So sad is that the.
Yep, that seems reasonable.
Mm-hmm. And anything else, like someone?
Should we be starting CSI discussion on group snapshots?
Group snapshots here.
Yes. Because it may take many months to get this into.
That's true. It's
So.
It's quite yeah. It's probably needs quite a lot of discussion.
Yep.
So, Sada, can we like just start kind of discuss this?
Yeah, I mean, discussion seems fine. Getting a design together seems fine. Just make sure that we have bandwidth and people working on all these items. So let's not overcommit and not get things done is my only feedback.
Sure.
But we wouldn't want to push that for like before CSI 1.0, would we? It would be like a post 1.0 thing, if timing wise.
I think we can start the discussion now, and then we can decide later. You know, as a community, we can decide when it will go in.
Okay.
So, I don't think it breaks anything, even if it goes in before or after. So.
Well, the key is to know whether we would want to hold up the 1.0 milestone for something like that or not.
Oh yeah. I don't know. I don't know how to answer that.
Maybe like let's have this discussion started and then have a conclusion whether it is.
Yeah, I think the next meeting's tomorrow, right? So.
Yeah.
Wednesday.
Oh yeah, today's Monday. Yeah.
Okay. It's. I think yeah. On Wednesday we'll like if we have time start discuss a little bit in CSI meeting too. Yeah.
Excellent.
Any other things we want to accomplish in Q4? Any suggestions or comments? So, okay, I think it seems reasonable, the work, like we can finish in Q4. And any other questions?
No, I'm good.
Yeah, so also like after like we have this alpha, right? I hope like people can continue to help us and also contribute if like you have some bandwidth. Yeah, you can let us know you want to work on something. That would be great. Yeah, we appreciate. And thank you very much. And I think that's for today. And see you next week.
All right, take care, guys.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.